This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome to The Quiet Professional. Today we are going to get into protest culture, free speech, and crowds on demand, which actually leads really nicely into the introduction for my guest. That is Adam Swart. He is the founder of Crowds on Demand, which is a firm specializing in paid protesting and advocacy campaigns across the political spectrum. He has over a decade of experience in public mobilization and is a recognized expert on how protests are funded, organized, and used for political and media impact. And he's appeared on several major news networks. And maybe most importantly, and worth mentioning, is he's an advocate for free speech and lawful protest, emphasizing transparency and authenticity in activism. Yet he warns that opaque funding, foreign influence, and professionalized activism are undermining public trust. We'll get into a whole bunch of those topics today, so it should be a good one. So welcome, Adam.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much, Nathan, for having me on your program. I'm happy to talk about all of those things, about Crowds on Demand, about protest culture, and kind of some of the issues that we in North America, because I know you're based up north, are facing. Because I think it's such an important thing. And I think there are in certain ways, some of the Commonwealth countries, like in Canada, are a little ahead of us in terms of taking away some of the free speech rights. And I think we have to be very vigilant, in the free world, that we don't have that happen. But on the other hand, there's certain things that you guys do on transparency that are better. So let's get into all of it.
Awesome. Before we get into all the craziness, I want to actually ask a little bit about you and your background, because I don't know too many people who are in this line of business. So can you kind of just give us some background on like where you're from, what put you off in this trajectory, and then we'll get into like the genesis of the company.
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Adam Swart. I'm the founder of the company, and I started this company almost 15 years ago when I was like not even of drinking age in the US. So I was 20 years old. I'm 35 now. So I've basically been doing this my entire like adult career. And then previously to that, obviously I wasn't doing anything of consequence as a 20-year-old, but I did work on a lot of political campaigns and, even a stint as a journalist. So one of the big things that I kind of learned in my youth was the power of context, right? What is that? What does context matter in protest? Well, if Martin Luther King spoke to 5 people when he had delivered "I Have a Dream" speech, it wouldn't have been nearly as effective as speaking to 1 million people, right? So putting your cause, your campaign, your company in the right context is critical for gaining traction for whatever it is you're trying to do and trying to get that attention, whatever, right? And I guess for people who think that's misleading, I always say, imagine if I was doing this interview without any clothes on, right? Well, part of context is I decided to put clothes on today to appear on a podcast, right? So that is putting myself in a professional context as opposed to an unprofessional context. So we all do things that put ourselves in the right context. Arranging attendees, arranging protests, arranging all that is just putting your movement in the appropriate context.
Okay, very interesting. So when you're coming up through school, what did you take in school? Was it anything in relation to this? Marketing, business?
Political science and French, actually.
And French? Okay.
Yes.
Why French?
So I when I'm up north in Canada, I like the bilingual thing that you guys do up there. Although you guys like take it to like a very militant thing. I mean, the head of Air Canada had to like resign because he gave a statement that wasn't in French. I'm like, that's extreme. That's extreme.
Yeah, it is.
And I it's funny that you guys take it very seriously up there, and it was kind of a fairly pointless thing for me to learn in the United States, but maybe one of these days it'll be effective.
Well, you know what I gotta say? That's a Quebec thing. I'm way out west, and I
Yeah.
don't know anybody that speaks French out here. We have like as a police officer, I'm current serving police officer. I mean, I come across a handful of people who have to speak French in Edmonton, but to be honest, I've come across people who speak different languages way more than French. But
Well, I would think
yeah,
so. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I'm very familiar. I shouldn't say too much about my extended family, but I do have a extended family who are from Edmonton that are made big Oilers fans. So I
there you go.
grew up as a sort of quasi Oilers fan by extension. They were very excited last year.
Yes,
You guys always Canada always seems to come close, but not. I feel bad that like you guys lost to Florida, like a place that doesn't even like have a
I know
hockey
they don't.
culture.
They don't even know what hockey is, and then we've lost to them twice.
Yeah, I was a college student when the Kings made the Stanley Cup. And I remember the talk in LA was like, wait, we have a hockey team? Like what is going on against that was against
Mhm.
Vancouver. So yeah, it's just funny. It's a very different culture. But yeah, um so anyway, I grew up really with like a uh one of the big things skills that I always thought I grew up with was the being an advocate.
Mhm.
Is a lot of what we do, there's a lot of like stuff online that circulates that what we do is like more in the line of politics, and certainly we do some politics, but a lot of what we do is really advocacy on issues that don't exactly have to do with politics. They're kind of local issues, they're business issues, but one thing I've always been really good at, even honestly, like as a kid, is like figuring out who is in charge and figuring out how to persuade the person in charge to like do what it
Mhm.
is that I want to do. Right. So like I always try to help my client. Half of what I do is like client has a problem and they're like, "Oh, I want to protest the Los Angeles City Council because I'm really upset with this federal legislation." It's like, well, why are we talking to LA City Council? Why are we not focused on the people who actually have power to help you in this case? Because a lot of people don't even understand how to work through who can actually help me and how do I
Yeah.
articulate a case to that person. So even as a kid, I was really good at that. So I think that kind of set the stage
Okay.
for me doing this.
You know, that's actually an interesting point. Maybe something we'll have to dive into as the conversation goes along, just talking about identifying the right people to speak to. Because, yeah, it's not always the talking head. There's a lot of other people in between you and them. And if your message isn't even getting to the top, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So you were doing this since you came out of university? You created the company while in university or just after?
So I started at the time. I mean, I obviously when you start a business, you have no idea what's going to come of
Mhm.
it. But there's a lot of interest, both in the politics side and also in like kind of the promotional space. Like one thing that I was kind of surprised about, but it's actually a big part of our business is doing a lot of promotional events for new companies, like startup companies,
Okay.
marketing type events. Um, like at outside trade shows, like conferences, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of that, and we really expanded from LA to New York and then kind of nationwide, and now we even do sort of selective international type engagements as well.
You know, I have a friend who used to be in a band and he played down in LA. So he went from Canada down there, tried to make it big. But he was telling me once one of his jobs was it was actually called a crowd fluffer. And he was
Oh
yeah,
yeah, this is a big
yeah, he
thing.
was put in like the Price is Right. And yeah, I think he said he did like some of the late night talk shows as well. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, I thought they were just that popular. Like I thought everybody there
Well,
just
it's hard to fill people up to fill it up every single day, like especially these shows that are like every day. It's hard. I mean, some shows have no trouble, and some probably need that additional kind of
Mhm.
support. Plus, you want enthusiastic people. You might want a diverse set of people, whatever it is. So yeah, a lot of these shows need people in the background.
So can you walk me through how crowds on demand works, like right from the beginning? If I'm some random company and I'm like, you know what, I want some attention on whatever is this product or a cause. So they just reach out and say, "Hey, I want 10,000 people," and off we go, or like, what's the process kind of involved?
Well, yeah, people will come to us in like one of two ways or somewhere in the middle. One way is like, look, we already know what we want to do. We want to do this big product launch. We have an auditorium arranged. We need people like outside as fans, and we need people inside to fill the auditorium, right? And we want this kind of person, and we're just basically there to fill, right? So that's fine. The other way is they are considering this big bill that's going to hurt our business in California, right? And we're a bunch of businesses that really are upset about this particular bill that's going to increase our costs and that's being contemplated in California. I want you to design a campaign to stop this
Okay.
from happening. So in that case, we're basically starting from the ground up, strategizing and figuring out, hey, based on what the client's goals are and what they want to accomplish, here's how we do it.
So do you have? Is it just like a database of? I don't know if I call them actors. Like, what are they? If there's like a professional term for them, and then you can just reach out to these people and say, "Hey, we have this event going on. Do you want to be a part of it? Do you not want to? Like, what is that whole
Yeah, I
process?"
think that's exactly how it works. So certainly when it comes to promotional events, it doesn't really matter so much. Then it's a little bit more of a casting process in terms of like, okay, maybe they want young, maybe they want old, right? In terms of like a protest, what we really want is for people to who are passionate about the cause. So I might have people in New York who are pro police. I might have people in Minneapolis who are environmentalists, right? Whatever the case may be. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I know just the perfect person to lead this effort. And other times I don't. And we have also a roster that we'll look into and we interview everybody before any of our events. So we'll kind of say, hey, like we have something that we think you'd be interested in. Like, what are your thoughts?
So you have it's like a database of the leaders of these different things, and then they reach out to 1,000 people, or
Well, it depends. No, sometimes it works that way, and other times we recruit the entire group. Sometimes we have kind of arrangements with organizations and leaders in different places where that leader kind of has people that they go to. So, hey, we're an environmentalist group, and we really like environmentalist causes, so we kind of have ways to facilitate that. Or maybe we're a pro police group, or maybe we're a anti-tax kind of uh, people. So yeah, it really depends. So we'll do it really just depends on the region and what we're doing in terms of how much work we have to do. Obviously that'll also play into the price. So if you're
Mhm.
looking for something that's like a liberal environmentalist group in rural Mississippi, we may not have that preordained. So we may have to create that out of the blue, and that might be a little more challenging than um something that's already in
Yeah.
existence.
So I mean, some of these sound like they could just be, and looking through the content that you had online, I looked through the website, some of the articles, and I just imagine these things. I don't even know how you would start this quickly. So, are some of these things like year-long projects to build up? Like, do you have, does an organization
Oh,
come at
we get them out pretty quick,
really?
because what we do is we oftentimes build up a new organization to serve as a focal point of a group. So yeah, like sometimes some of these campaigns, you're right, they are year-long efforts, but I like to start, boom, let's get it
Okay.
started, right? So I mean, most of our clients come to us and they want to they part of why they come to us is that we act quickly, right? Because one of the things, and I think it works to similar in Canada, but the US legal system is really slow. So in the US, you basically have three ways if you want to advocate. You can push the government to do something. Well, a lot of big interests already own the
Mhm.
government, right? very hard to sometimes get that. And even if that it's not something like, oh, you're fighting big tech or big pharma, well, it's still just a really slow process, right? And moreover, having kind of a protest component, a PR component is going to expedite things, right? Number two, you can take legal action. Well, that's really slow. That can take 5, 10 plus years if they have good lawyers. And it just, okay, at the end of the day, you have a judgment against someone. Well, okay, that might be of questionable value.
Yeah.
So one thing beautiful about what we do is it's like, hey, you want us to get outside of corporate headquarters and, hold them accountable. We'll be out there, in 3 days from now.
Wow. Yeah, it certainly, and it works the same up here. Like you can have protests, you can march down the street and say pretty much whatever you want for now. Some of those laws look like they're trying to change some of them, but it sounds very similar. Are there any topics that you won't touch as a company, or can you give an examples of like somebody who's come forward and said, "Hey, I want you to help me with this," and you're like, "Hell no, I'm not touching that."
Well, number one, of course, we are a kind of law-abiding company, so anything that isn't lawful, we wouldn't do. So, I suppose that should be self-evident, but it's important to say it anyway. But a lot of times people don't even know what's not lawful. So, like you're not allowed to just block a road and lie in the middle of the road without a permit, right? So like that, certain activists think that's nonviolent, but that is actually unlawful. And we would never be a part of such a thing, right? So obviously anything that's unlawful, but I would say obviously an extremist group. So the one actual difference of the United States and Canada is like in the United States, you could be a Nazi group and you would have the right to demonstrate, but we wouldn't obviously support or facilitate that. In the United States, the First Amendment really extends to really extreme forms of speech, but just because that would be lawful doesn't mean that we would have any interest in being a part of that. While I believe in Canada, I do not believe a Nazi rally could take place, even a peaceful one.
Yeah, it depends. It depends what they're doing, what they're saying, what kind of things they're showing at the rallies, and
Yeah, correct. Correct. And I think that's a good faith debate. That's a very good faith debate. The only reason that I think that unfortunately you have to allow those type of things to take place is because the definition of kind of what constitutes a hate group is so subjective that like I think we can probably all, and 99% of us, could probably sit there and be like, yeah, we really would rather not hear from Nazis. But on the other hand, it's like, well, how do you define that?
Yes.
And then how do you prevent someone from saying, oh, well, a Black Lives Matter is a hate group, or Greenpeace is a hate group, or whatever. And I just think that the reality is I don't like those subjective distinctions. If they're doing something violent, that should be held accountable. It doesn't matter in the name of what cause. If they're peacefully demonstrating, even if it's horribly offensive, then all I would say is just stay away from the demonstration.
Yeah, if you don't like what they're saying, don't go there, kind of thing.
Don't go there. But I mean, I guess to answer your question, nonetheless, we wouldn't associate ourselves with anything like that. I try to also associate myself with causes that are nuanced. Like I don't tend to like to be part of this Republican Democrat noise machine where it's like, or Israel Palestine, where it's like you got a bunch of people on one side, a bunch of people on the other side screaming at each other. Why? Because I just don't know whether that's effective. Like, okay, yeah, we could provide another 5,000, 10,000 bodies to be part of that, but to what end? I like to advance more nuanced causes or nuanced topics that aren't like being talked about. Okay. So I find that that's more interesting.
Can you say, is there a specific campaign that you've been a part of, that the company's been a part of, that you're like, you know what, this was actually a really cool opportunity and it turned into something?
Yeah, well, Delete Facebook is a great example. So after the Cambridge Analytica, so we did Delete Facebook. So like after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, right? If you guys remember from like almost 10 years ago at this point, where Facebook was like really misusing customer data, user data. And even like genocide occurred in Myanmar against Muslims because like it was allowed to spread on Facebook with no moderation, like fake information, right? So just the sort of moral rot that was going on at the company. So, we did these rallies like to leave Facebook, outside Zuckerberg's estate, outside the Congress and all that. And what was really interesting is very shortly thereafter, maybe a year or less after, they actually changed their name to Meta, right? So it's like, imagine getting $1 trillion company to change its name and make it much harder to do political ads. So that was like, to me, I thought this was such a fun campaign because everyone hates Facebook, right? And I still don't call them Meta. Everyone hates Facebook. Why? Republicans don't trust Facebook because it's like, okay, this is this like California, Silicon Valley, whatever. And Democrats don't trust Facebook because they sort of believe that Facebook was part of how Trump won the first election, the 2016, through, the kind of some of the misleading ads and whatever, right? Fake news. So no one likes Facebook. And I honestly think if you thought no one liked Facebook in 2017, 18, 19, people really don't like them today because they just keep on doing like more bad things. But that's a great example of a type of campaign that is, I guess you could say political, but transcends politics.
I feel like there's nothing nowadays that doesn't involve some degree of politics. It's impossible to escape.
Right. But it's a nuanced campaign that doesn't. That's a great example of the type of campaign that we like to take on. Or we took on another campaign where insurance companies were discriminating against the LGBT community using a very popular drug, not recreational, but a
pharmaceutical
anti-HIV drug as a reason to deny life insurance coverage. So what we did was we really protested, called the various insurance commissioners, which in the United States are mostly elected officials, to crack down on this practice, and they did, and this discrimination was eliminated, right? So we have a history of, so that's, again, it's not a political cause, this is a discrimination cause, right? So does it touch politics? Yes, because it involves political officials, but this has nothing to do with Republican, Democrat. This is all focused on policy.
Okay. Do you kind of fit like maybe early stages, somewhere in the middle of like this whole process? Do you specifically get critiqued for providing people? Like, do you get wrapped up in the critique of protests and things going on the street?
Well, look, my goal is to not, unless the client wants me to generally I work sort of behind the scenes role with our campaigns. And the benefit of that is I like our campaigns to speak for themselves, and I don't want kind of me to be the story. I want the substance of the issue to be the story. So the answer is I try not to be involved personally. I'm more in the behind the scenes dealing with the client and coordinating, not so much being kind of the public face. Typically, I will recruit someone to be the public face.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of like some we were mentioning earlier about the people that show up to these things or that get recruited to go to protest or voice whatever it might be. They either are actually passionate about that topic or they're just straight up paid actors. And it's like they're just there to be loud, to cause mayhem, or, get into the criminal element of things. But it's like if they're all showing up because they're actually genuinely interested, it could be from across the country, but it's maybe they don't have a way of knowing these things are going on till they get recruited into this. So it's just like where would the critique come in? It's like, do we just hire people and they go out and cause problems? Or are we actually bringing people together that care about this issue?
I think the critique, if someone critiques, it should be because something was done that was wrong, not because something was said that I disagree with. So I think that's really important. And I think one challenge that we have is really a big thing, and not that this is a new thing, but it does feel that people are constantly trying to delegitimize each other. So instead of being like, here's why I disagree with this protest, you'd rather be like, this is George Soros, this is the Koch brothers. This is Elon Musk. This is, trying to blame this on various right wing, left wing billionaires when, like, the reality is, at least in our country, like, the system is run by the billionaires, right? So, and the trillionaires, right? So, like, that's how the system is run. So let's not pretend like the side that I agree with has no billionaires and the side that you agree with does, right? So I think that instead of that, tell me why this is a bad idea. Tell me why. So, like, for example, like the largest profile campaign in Canada recently was the truckers, right? And some of what they did was unlawful, right? I do think that they were like blocking things off, which I don't condone at all. So I think that when you disobey the law, sometimes you actually distract from your message. But if you are obeying the law, then the focus should be, okay, well, what are they saying? And here's my response to their points, not here's my attempt to delegitimize them being there.
But you guys, so for your company with Crowds on Demand, can you get into any trouble? Are you liable at all for the people that, like, you couldn't be liable for the people that show up because there's zero control who just walks in off the street. So,
well, I'm not liable if where I am liable for is for what I instruct people to do. So we are very clear in what we instruct people to do and not to do. Everyone is told to be lawful, peaceful, respectful, and to obey lawful instructions from the authorities, right? So if I were to tell people to do something unlawful and incentivize them to do that, then obviously that would be on me. But I would never do that, and I have never done that. So my responsibility is for what I tell people to do. But I will say that in 15 years, we've really never had any incident occur. Whenever anyone's broken the law, it's funny. It's always been the people we're protesting who've, like, I've had someone arrested, like someone who were protesting arrested, because in Texas, you can get arrested just for grabbing someone's sign out of their hands because it's property. So someone who grabbed one of my protesters' signs was arrested.
So it was on the other side.
That was on the other side of it, right? So that can certainly occur, but from the perspective of like this, no.
Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the complexity of the people and the groups that go out to these things. One thing I was wondering is, like, with the current environment, and you talked about this with, like, everyone's just shouting and screaming. I just wonder if, like, someone says, okay, but I want, 500 or 5,000 people to show up. Does that help or hurt a cause? Because then they're bound to just start screaming at each other. So it's like, how do you have a nuanced conversation there? So, unless they're going to go and basically just hold the square or wherever they might be doing this, like, you can have your lawful protest, that'll get attention. But I feel like it always devolves. Like, the more people show up, and you just get a bunch of these other groups just always have to come out. The bigger the crowd, they start attaching themselves to the big issue, trying to get their little piece of the media, their 15 seconds of fame. So,
and we've done that too. Yeah. We've done that too. Sent small groups to big rallies to get our piece of the media. So yeah, I've done that, and that's obviously that's a smart strategy, by the way. I would, the funny thing is, people always associate us with like thousands of people events, and we've done that, to be sure, but most of what we do is 50 to 100 people, because I feel like that's often what I like about that is, for a nuanced cause, for like a non-Israel Palestine, like you were saying, like the big causes, like 50 to 100 people is more than enough to get attention, and it's more controllable, and I can control the narrative a little bit more. Because you're right, managing 5,000 people is very hard. Now, of course, we can be clear with instructions, but how do I make sure that everyone is consistent with the narrative? Now, the benefit of a larger crowd is it's more likely to generate large media attention, which is oftentimes an objective. But the benefit of a smaller crowd is it's more controllable. And I personally prefer like 50 to 100 people, because then I can really control it. But it's still enough to get media attention in many cases.
Do you get any kind of attention from politicians, the company itself? Like, what do they say? Do they come out and use the services of?
Of course they do.
Yeah.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Well, not mostly it's not them directly, but it's their associates, their entities that associate with them. We don't work directly for candidates very often. I mean, we do sometimes, but a majority of what we do is more like for interested parties and causes. Um, yeah, so yeah, we certainly will work around political events,
Okay.
but more often than not, it's it's more like for a cause or an issue advocacy group that wants to accomplish something than being hired by the politicians themselves.
Did you ever have I was wondering this when I was reading through some of the interviews you'd done, and, like, when you talk about some of these bigger issues, like when, say BLM stuff's going on or the George Floyd protests, and, like, do you ever have police agencies reach out and say, "Hey, you wanna throw a few people our way and maybe some supporters or something on our side?" Law enforcement, anybody?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of pro police action. I'll put it this way. I have a long history of working on pro police. I mean, I would say maybe I would restate that pro law and order campaigns.
Okay.
Because I think those are slightly
Yeah.
different. But I would say pro law and order is saying we want responsible, well funded law enforcement, right? And that's an important thing in the aftermath of the kind of ridiculous defund campaign. By the way, I would never work with defund the police because I oppose it so strongly. Now, I don't know how it is in Canada, but I think a lot of police unions in the United States have done themselves a very big disservice by defending cops who are like the very small number who kind of engage in so blatantly bad
Mhm.
acts. So that's why I wanted to correct myself when I said pro police. Instead, I meant pro law and
Yeah.
order, which is sort of pro police, but it's saying, hey, we want very little crime, and that means Richard Nixon, who was certainly a complicated historical figure in America, but he said there can be no justice without law and order, and there can be no law and order without
Mhm.
justice. So what does that mean? What that means that you can't expect people not to take to the streets if you don't have a just society, right? So if a police officer can kill someone without consequence and wrongly, and then you will not have law and order because people will not feel that they can rely on the
Yeah.
system. But simultaneously, if you don't have law and order, if you don't have that basic sort of system, you will never have justice. So I'm very proud to one of my biggest issues is actually making our cities great. And I think our cities in America have like become kind of dangerous unnecessarily since George Floyd because of the defund the police movement and the associated
Well,
policies.
the difference which I say between Canada and the US, and I've talked with some people from police unions down there and different police officers in general, is the US just plays at the extremes. Like it seems like, especially in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, there's no middle ground. It's like 90 or 10, and you're out there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Canada
true.
is, it used to be like 5, 10 years behind, and wherever the states was going, they kind of just like sweep us up and we'd go along. Now with the internet, it's more like maybe 5 minutes or 5 months. And
Yeah,
as you go to one extreme, it just all those narratives and everything kind of spill over across the border, and then we get swept up in it.
yes,
But it's not like it's been extreme, but we'll have like a day or a week of just
yeah,
insanity. Whereas, cities will be burning for a month in some of these cases in the US, and then it'll go back the other way, and
yes,
then we get picked up with that. But, you know, most of our media up here, it's American. Like we only got state
yeah,
news outside of
that's
that.
true.
So we have mostly American channels and programs, and that's all the influence from celebrities to politicians to all of it. So,
Yeah, well, that is correct. That is correct. Well, and that's kind of it is kind of interesting thing. Like I think that like our cities should be really safe. And what's interesting is like, I mean, before either of us were probably born in the
mhm,
80s, and cities in America were quite dangerous places, and the stories are pretty bad. And then when I was a college student, or even like my early 20s, I remember I just walked the streets like at 1 a.m. Like I would arrive, like I used to work, one of my other jobs, I used to work for American Airlines in college. This was at UCLA. And I would always take the last flight to New York from Los Angeles and hang out in New York on weekends sometimes with people I know. And I would get in at like 1 a.m. and I just get on the subway and like, no, I wouldn't have a care in the world. Like, and now I would never get on the subway at 1 a.m. in New York City. Not to say that it would inherently be dangerous, but the risk isn't worth it right now. So I'm like, our cities have become too dangerous.
It's the same in Canada.
And
exact same.
Yeah. I think that's right. And that's unfortunate. And I would love to one of my main priorities, like I think I've articulated whenever I do these things, the biggest thing, 3 priorities I have is take on big tech, take on the food, pharma, industrial complex, and make our cities safe and beautiful again. Yeah. So, and whenever you say make something again, that's not a MAGA slogan. I just
yeah, you got to be careful of the wording nowadays.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not gonna like not use that terminology just because someone else is using that terminology. But yeah, like I would like to be a part of that, and I think that as you said, the US goes to extremes. So I think what the problem that you've had in a lot of cities is you have on the one hand the sort of BLM type activists who are like defund, dismantle the police. And then you have the police unions being like, oh, police can do no wrong. Like you better back us no matter what. Like, and it's like, well, no, you probably need like more groups that are saying, no, we love we love law enforcement, but we want responsible, well-funded law enforcement.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And like, if you look at what ICE has done in Minneapolis, that was bad. Like, that's just an example of why local police needs to step up because, like, I mean, as part of my job, as you can imagine, I've probably interacted with thousands of police officers in my time managing protests. And it's like probably like 99.5% of the interactions are extremely positive. But whenever the 0.5 is rarely local law enforcement, it's whenever I'm dealing with federal or whether I'm dealing with like people who are not experienced at dealing with protests, those are the people who are most likely to be the jerks. Like NYPD, Chicago PD, LA, it's like, I know the rules, they know the rules. Like it's a very, very kind of collaborative environment that we have working with the cops.
Have you ever been on the front lines of like any big things going on, like just personally, like you've gone down to anything, and I don't know, when the tear gas is flying and all that stuff?
I try to. I have a pretty good head on my shoulders, not to kind of oversell myself, but I try to. I have a good sense for when the tear gas is going to flow, and I try not to be there. Because like, and it's the same thing. I try not to involve our people in those type of incidents, right? So if there's like going to be some big showdown between like Proud Boys and like Antifa, right? Like, well, why do I want my people there, even if there's a value? Like, I'd rather be doing our own thing. Yeah. So I try not to be on there. I've certainly been in various tense moments, but not ever when the tear gas. But my goal is to persuade the police officers to like, be the source of like calm. And so if there is a tense point, to kind of diffuse whatever that tension might be. But part of it is, again, when you follow the law, you tend not to have these problems. And sometimes what I will do when I'm talking to police officers, so let's just say I have 200 people outside a convention center, and the police officer might say, oh, can you move across the street? And in that case, I would say, like, respectfully, no, we can't. We have the right to be right here out front. And then if they say, well, we don't want you there. And I would say, well, respectfully, I would ask that you escalate this matter to your supervisor, who can let you know that we have the right to be here, right? So part of it is like, when you speak with respect, but with knowledge of your rights, then I think that's the way to do it. And so fortunately, in 15 years, I've never been in those type of situations, and I never hope to be, because we're very savvy in how we operate. It's another reason why people should hire us instead of kind of trying to do it on their own.
Yeah, I get a little bit of the knowledge and the experience. And have you ever
Right.
had an issue with, say, bad actors coming into your group and you've had to get rid of people because they might go to the extreme or cause some sort of problems?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, not like we haven't really had this in 15 years, and part of it is number one, as I said, we were very selective about the cause that we take on. And number two is we interview every participant for like 15 to 20 minutes on Zoom to like make sure, or like in person or on the phone to make sure that number one, they care about the cause, and number two, they're committed to peaceful, respectful advocacy. And part of it is like, look, our people want to get paid at the end of the day. So if they do something that's wrong, they're not going to like ultimately get paid. And
Mm.
so actually part of like us compensating people actually ensures the stability of that. So if we did ever have a problem, which we haven't really, like we would just tell them to get lost, and but we haven't really had that problem.
One of the things that I mentioned in your bio and kind of speaks to this last point, we are just talking about some of the bad actors that could be out there. When you talk about foreign influence,
Yeah.
do you have any way of knowing that, like, a cause that you might be going into may be getting backed by foreign influence, or maybe the people reaching out to you? Like what level?
It's a major threat. It's a major threat,
Yeah,
Nathan. And what I would say is I've actually offered my assistance to the United States government to help with this, because the challenge is the answer is no, I don't. Because if you're smart and you're a foreign country, you'll have several layers. Well, I call them Russian
yeah,
dolls. Um, so the group that's contacting me, or that's contacting a PR firm, or that's contacting CBS News to place ads, that might be a US registered entity, but who's backing that group and who's backing that
yeah.
group? We need to really trace these things and do it in a way that's preserves constitutional freedoms, but also like transparency. And I think what is happening is our law enforcement isn't really well equipped to do that.
Yeah.
So because they don't understand how this works. So I've offered my services to our federal law enforcement. They haven't really taken me up on it, but maybe one of these days.
Maybe. Well, you know what? So I just had recently, I had two city councilors from our city on the podcast, and both of them I asked, when you come into, one of them's been there for a couple terms now, one was brand new. So I was like, okay, this is perfect because I'm going to get the perspective from like a person who's kind of seasoned in this, been through it a bit, and someone who just went through all the orientation and all the training. And I said, do you guys get any awareness training for foreign influence? People coming to you, what do you do when even just a local group is like, hey, we want you to come support this cause? Like how to
Yeah.
question them or look into anything? Zero, none. And that's all
Yeah.
the way up through government. And it's surprising that they aren't aware of these issues. So it's like law enforcement has a problem trying to detect this and deal with it. Politicians.
And they don't understand how it works. The problem is the law enforcement doesn't understand because they've never run an advocacy
Mm,
group before. So they don't really fully understand. So they're coming in as if I'm trying to teach myself code. Like that's the problem. They don't really actually understand how the system works, of like there's a group within a group within a group within a group. So you have to really go back a few ways, and they're not really good at doing that. And again, like the challenge is you also have to have reasonable cause, and naturally as a free country like Canada is and like the United States is, you are going to be a little more easy to exploit than a non-free country,
yeah.
right? But how do you ensure that hey, who is this? And part of it is like, okay, well, the number one thing that you can say is if you feel that this will advance a clear and obvious goal of a foreign country. I mean, I don't know, like in a Canada case, like if there, let's just say you have a group that, didn't Canada arrest some executives from Huawei at one
Yeah.
point? And like, let's just say there's some advocacy group that out of the blue is like, release those people. They're being wrongfully held. It's like, okay, well, who is this group? And like, where are they from and why are they saying that? So I guess, like, I mean, maybe it may, but the challenge is, well, how do you, should the, should there be a suspicion of guilt or not, right? Because you could just have a group that says, oh, well, no, this is racist, or this is abrogation of civil procedure that they're arrested, or is this influence from a foreign government? So the challenge is, how do you do that while also protecting kind of, in the United States, constitutional rights, or in Canada, like basic kind of foundational
Well, I
rights?
think what you always want at the forefront is true American issues or Canadian issues, right? You don't want it to be an issue that some foreign governments pushing and saying that everybody should be riled
Right.
up about, but you're like, well, this isn't actually an issue anymore, or we've changed, or we're doing better now, but we're getting all spun up about something over here, and meanwhile they're doing what they want over there. So yeah, it could be kind of difficult, and this might, I guess, maybe play a bit into something that you've been working on. So you're the author of the Transparency in Political Demonstrations Act. Do
Yes.
you want to talk a little bit about this
Yes.
and what it kind of means?
Well, part of this is, like, we're hoping that this, if passed by Congress, might help with maybe understanding a little bit of what people see when they see a protest. Because I do think people are like, okay, when I see a protest, what am I really seeing? And what I think you're going to see, what the Transparency and Political Demonstrations Act is saying, any rally that has over 500 participants, so that's kind of what I'd consider a large rally, has to disclose who is funding it, from the bottom to the top. So with the onus on them to kind of be comprehensive in their disclosures, and then also who's getting paid, from the top to the bottom, right? So that'll at least, I think what you're going to see is, like, every large rally has big donors, and every rally has a bunch of people getting paid. And I think what I'm hoping is that refocuses us on the issue, rather than, like, focusing on the who is backing it.
Back
Because,
to the George Soros and other names.
yeah, is that people are backing all kinds of things. So I don't know, like, will Congress pass it? I don't know, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. Just as we're kind of coming up to the end of the time here, and I got to say, I really appreciate your time. This stuff is fascinating to me. I think it's going to blow at least Canadians' minds, because they don't realize these things exist out there. But it's something I've been exploring a bit more on this show, is talking about some of the things going on in the I don't want to say the protest domain. But what are some of your current projects right now? Some things that you got coming in the future? Anything that you want to talk about here or mention?
Well, actually, I mean, like I said, big tech, big food, big pharma, and making our cities wonderful are sort of the things I'm most interested in taking on. Obviously, economically, like, we're taking on different, like, a bunch of other campaigns. So, like, I'd love to focus just on those issues, but the economic reality is that we'll take a bunch of other campaigns as well, and that's fine. One thing I'd actually like to give your listeners some advice on is, like, I don't know how, maybe your listeners are involved in politics, but a lot of people aren't. But a lot of people, almost everyone, will at some point in their lives have to be their own advocates. And uh, I was telling you earlier that, like, ever since I was a kid, I've been pretty good at advocating for myself. And I will kind of give some advice that I've learned in the thick of kind of running, everything from local campaigns to multi-billion-dollar kind of national type campaigns, right? How, with like multi-billion-dollar implications, is how do you effectively advocate? And ordinary people might be in a, well, I was going to say, I was saying, in American context, what if your insurance company denies your claim? Thank God you guys don't have to deal with that bullshit in Canada. You just, like, actually, like, it's amazing that in America, like, the first thing that happens when you get diagnosed with cancer is, like, you have to put up a GoFundMe. I mean, it's, like, so messed up. That's like the worst thing about America, is that, like, we let people die due to lack of access for healthcare. I mean, literally, if there's one thing I could say is the worst thing about our country, it's that we let people die from lack of access to healthcare.
So that's the advocacy part in there, like who advocates for you in there.
Correct. Well, you have to, in America, you have to like advocate for yourself with your insurance company. Like your insurance company like denies your claim, and you've got to like be like, no, this is why I need this like life-saving drug. And like imagine having to do that because the insurance company has every incentive to just like let you die, and like get you off the books. Like it's just sort of a messed up system that we have. But you have to be your own advocate, or okay, your landlord increases the rent, or you can't afford the rent, so you're getting evicted. We all have to be our own advocates. So here's my advice for people if they are in that situation where you have to be your own advocate. Number one, figure out what you're trying to achieve. So, okay, you're behind on your rent and you get an eviction notice. Well, what are you trying to achieve? Well, you're trying to not get evicted. So you're trying to persuade. So number one, you're trying to not get evicted. Number two, who are you trying to persuade to not evict you? The owner, right? Well, so maybe this building superintendent doesn't have the power. So maybe you have to go to the regional manager. You have to figure out who has the power. So figure out what you want, figure out who has the power, then figure out what is the argument that is going to resonate with them, right? So I have kids, I have a dog, I have a cat. That might be a compelling argument, but they might not care about that. They don't care about your kids or your dog or your cat. They care about making money on their investment. So maybe what you have to say is like, look, I just got a new job. I'm going to get current within 3 months. And if you do evict me, you're going to have to pay a ton of money and, costs to try to get me out, legal, whatever. So the stick is I'm going to make it really difficult for you to evict me. And the carrot is I'm going to get caught up pretty quick, right? So now you're making a case in real practical terms that they can understand. And that hopefully is compelling, right? Because a lot of people will make an argument of why it matters to them, not why it should matter to you. And if I'm trying to convince you, I need to make sure that it matters to you, not that it matters to me. So that's like a big misnomer. And then the next thing is, don't accept lip service. A lot of times people will say, okay, I'll listen. Oh, I'll think about it. Well, no, you need action. So how do you have to be relentless, and if the regional manager doesn't get you what you want, then you go to the CEO, right? If CEO doesn't get you what you want, go to the board members. You know what I mean? Go to everybody who might have some influence and try to reach each and every one of those people. So that's how we get things done at Crowds on Demand. That's how we've solved everything from local traffic issues to multi-billion-dollar business disputes. And that's how you can solve your own advocacy challenges.
That's awesome. And you know what? That's good advice. I would say you just did about 50% of a policeman's job in that one speech right there. Because that's most of what happens when we show up to things. Neighbor disputes, people arguing with their spouse, people arguing with their landlords, whatever it is. It's always, a couple people arguing. And you're like, here's how we're going to solve this. So I think that's great advice. Just last thing I always kind of wrap up on is, where can people find you and your work if they want to reach out?
Yeah, www.crowdsondemand.com. That's crowdsondemand.com.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thanks for being on here today. Hang on for 2 seconds. We'll say bye offline. But I really do appreciate you taking the time and having this discussion with us.
It was my pleasure, Nathan.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.